So one of Twitter's lawyers just came out and admitted to censoring something like 50% of people who were tweeting about the DNC leaks, like the hashtags, and then something like 25% of the people who were tweeting about Podesta, right? So this is like hundreds of thousands of tweets, and of those tweets, there was only a fraction that were actually Russian linked, right? There was something like 2%. So that's like a couple thousand, and Russian linked is a pretty broad term. That could be like just some random dude in Russia in his house that has no link to the government, and stuff like this. And the whole point of this was to prevent like interference in the election because of the fucking big stink liberals were making about Russia, Russia, Russia. So like they were doing this in effort to silence propaganda per se, but they were just silencing WikiLeaks, and everything within WikiLeaks is verifiable, right? So it's like they can't, like, that's not propaganda. That's real stuff that happened, and it's not fake news. So people are bitching and moaning about how Russians interfere with the elections and are doing this and that, but really the biggest interference comes from like Twitter and social media on behalf of liberal governments to censor people on the right, essentially. So if you really want to say who's trying to sway the elections, it's clearly companies like this who have a much larger impact than a few thousand tweets from Russia, or even a couple 100 million impressions from Russians, right? That's not a lot. A lot of people can get a couple 100 million impressions in a couple of weeks on certain big Twitter accounts. So, that's not going to necessarily influence the election. And there was even a fucking rally, an anti-Trump rally that was organized by the fucking Russians. Thousands of people attended it against Trump. So they're going to fuck with either side, right? They're going to fuck with either side if they can. But in my opinion, yeah, the real fucking shit comes from them, from censoring all these things coming out of WikiLeaks, who they just now associated with Russia. And they're like, oh, Russian puppets. It's like, yeah, 5 years ago, you people were praising him when he was saying shit you liked about leaders that you didn't like, right? But now all of a sudden, they're Russian operatives, they're this, they're that, and it's like, it's just complete nonsense. But at least they've come out and admitted it, right? And admitted it, A lot of people are now vindicated because they've been saying this for a long time. They've been saying, hey, we're being censored by them. And it was like, no, you're just a conspiracy theorist. You're making this shit up. It's just crazy right-wingers, blah, blah, blah. But they've come out and admitted it. So clearly we know who Twitter and stuff is like essentially working for, right? And they are a private company, right? They can block whoever they want. And I'm not one of those people who wants to make it like necessarily a right for Twitter because, I think, that's just going to set a bad precedent for the future. We don't know the ramifications of that. I would rather just keep it as much of a free market as we possibly can and just support other platforms to make them more competitive, right? And it is possible. Like, a lot of companies were huge and it looks monumental. It looks like they're never going to topple and fall, but there's only a few companies that were really big 100 years ago that are still around today. Of the thousands that were big throughout the years, they're all gone. So, support other people like I don't know, Gab, Minds. I follow them. You can follow me in the description below. You can look in the links below. But yeah, I'm just glad that they've finally had to admit it, at least. And now we can't really be called crazy for pointing it out. But that's all I pretty much had to say. If you like my content, subscribe and have a great day. See you.